Hi. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are really excited to celebrate the second season of Foundering. Our next episode drops tomorrow. Foundering is our serialized podcast from Bloomberg Technology, where each season we go deep into one controversy within the tech industry. This season is about TikTok. My name is Sean Wen. I'm the executive producer of the show. I'd like to introduce Shelly Banjo. Shelly is the host of this season. She's been reporting on TikTok for over 4 years now. Hi, Shelly. How are you?
Good.
Up next is Kurt Wagner. Kurt is the social media reporter at Bloomberg. He's been covering social media now for almost 8 years and joined Bloomberg 2 years ago. He works in our San Francisco office. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, Sean.
Up next is Marjay Roberts. Marjay worked at Musical.ly, the app that eventually became folded into TikTok in San Francisco, and then LA from 2016 to the fall of 2017. She led Musical.ly's partnerships with some of the music labels and worked with influencers and musical artists to get onto the app. Now she lives in Atlanta and she runs her own startup focused on beauty and personal care product reviews. Hey, Marjay, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hi. Next is John Boyd Bolton, who helped start a company called Flipagram that was acquired by TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, in 2017. John stayed on at ByteDance for a few years. He helped ByteDance acquire Musical.ly and sign record deals with the world's largest record labels, and he's still a shareholder at ByteDance. John now lives in Nashville and is the co-founder of Super Hi-Fi, an AI platform that powers next-generation listening experiences for music and audio platforms. Hey, John.
Hello. Good to be here.
So this is going to be a 1-hour event tonight. We're going to listen to a few clips from the show, and then Shelly, Kurt, Marjay, John, and I will have a short conversation. And you can ask us questions too. Please tweet your questions to @podcasts, @business, or put them in the chat with YouTube. But first, we're going to play a clip from the show. Shelly, will you help set this up?
Yeah, so this clip is a peek inside the early days of Musical.ly, and you'll hear Marjay talk a little bit about her time there in the clip.
Okay, cool.
Oh, it definitely did not feel like an American company. We were in constant everyday contact with the Chinese team. We very much took a lot of our cues from the Chinese team, especially since our founders were based there for the majority of the time.
Musical.ly opened its first U.S. outpost in a scrappy WeWork in San Francisco. Here's Marjay.
We worked in a rework room. There was one room. Yes, so we crammed in as much as we can. That was very much like Harry Potter in a closet.
There was a lot of urgency and excitement. Here's Jaja, who was so impressed by Musical.ly's rise, she decided to go work for them.
We were ready to kick it off our second summer, really. It's an important time because it's when kids are out of school and they're bored at home. It was a great opportunity for us to take the growth to the next level.
And that's when the venture capitalists rushed in. By 2016, Musical.ly had raised over $150 million from some of Silicon Valley's biggest VC firms. It surpassed over 100 million downloads. And the app was a huge sensation among teenagers, even if it was virtually unknown to adults. Here's Marjay again.
Musical.ly was very underground, but I discovered that Gen Z knew all about it, but no one else did. So I actually reached out to my niece. She's a preteen at the time. I was like, do you know what this app is called Musical.ly? And this was the moment of truth. She literally almost had a heart attack. She's like, oh my God, it's the coolest app ever. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I'm like, what is going on?
Musical.ly allowed you to shoot a video and then with a touch of a button, add effects and a soundtrack. Within seconds, you had this striking finished product.
How to be a British stereotype.
Drink lots of tea.
Unicorn challenge.
And Gen Z took to it.
You go do that because I love you so much.
The short form video format is very perfect for younger folks because it requires very little attention span, quite honestly. And I think ultimately it was just very easy to get using. It didn't require you to create an original song or create an original joke, you could get started on the platform very easily by using an existing clip or an existing song.
'Cause I know when that Highlander.
Their teen users got the hang of it quickly, and some of them were so good at making these entertaining short videos, they were getting famous on the app.
Thanks to all you guys on Musical.ly for supporting me, and I hope you guys like my EP.
We would have some of our users come in and meet the team, and they were so excited to meet us because they thought that, well, we make them famous sometimes. So it was pretty great just to be there, like on the ground there.
And by famous, I mean just a massive number of eyeballs were on these teen influencers, even though Musical.ly hadn't hit the mainstream yet. They were even beating out Beyonce on Instagram.
Beyonce on Instagram posted this picture of herself announcing her pregnancy, I think, and it had 1 million views or likes in 24 hours. The unique difference with Musical.ly is that our everyday influencers who were not traditional celebrities were getting 3 million likes in an hour.
And we're back. I love that clip, Margie. I love that part about Beyonce. It just so crystallizes the beginning of this really special thing that was about to happen. Help us paint the picture. Musical.ly was the app that eventually folded into TikTok. How similar was it? How similar were the two apps, Musical.ly and TikTok?
They're very similar. TikTok has all of the key components that Musical.ly had, and they almost kind of, revolutionized it into what it is today. A lot of just different color changes and color schemes from our pink to, the black and white of what TikTok is today. But Musical.ly essentially is TikTok. And I think, obviously TikTok has grown into, incorporating even more technology that allows them to really be able to tune into who their users are and how to keep them engaged. So it's very, very similar. It's almost identical in a lot of ways.
And of course, the mastermind behind Musical.ly is one of the founders, Alex Ju. Tell us a little bit about him. Did you feel like his original vision of Musical.ly kind of lasted through today and is being realized now?
I think in a lot of ways he was really in tune with trying to understand who his users were, and I think it does for the most part hold true to what it is today. It's really about creating a space for everyday people to express themselves creatively. And I think that still rings true. Now, I think in the past, it was very much more hyper-focused on music, hence the name Musical.ly. And so over time, there was definitely a goal to diversify the content and making sure that all type of content was able to be readily accessible. And so I think that's the biggest part is there's so much more content beyond the lip syncing that was really the main, the key content early on when it was Musical.ly based.
And Kurt, I want to go over to you because we were reminiscing about, writing about Musical.ly in its early days. And, you've been covering social media for almost a decade now. What, at the time, do you remember, what stood out for you at Musical.ly? Why was this something that you're like, oh, I should probably pay attention to this?
Yeah, I mean, Musical.ly and then TikTok popped up on my radar at different parts over the last 4 or 5 years. I think Musical.ly at first started catching the attention of other people in the industry who were like, to Marjay's point, we're noticing these incredible engagement metrics. And they were like, oh my gosh, look at this video. It has 3 million likes or whatever it may be, right? But at the time, Musical.ly felt like it was very young in terms of the audience. Like it wasn't just teenagers, it was like young teenagers. And so as a result, a lot of people kind of dismissed it. Certainly I did. I was kind of like, oh, it's this popular thing, but like it's too young, right? It's not going to catch on. And then when ByteDance bought Musical.ly for $800 million, that was like, oh my gosh, okay, you don't spend $800 million on something unless there's some real potential there. And so I think I started paying closer attention. And I was trying to think about this, Shelly, like early 2019, I think, is when I started seeing TikTok videos on my Instagram feed. And that's when I was like, okay, this is an app that I've been aware of, but I've kind of been neglecting for too long. And about early to mid 2019, I was like, if this is half of my Instagram feed now, I need to start paying closer attention to this app. And I'd say about that point is when I really, for me, it started to register as a force that I should be paying attention to.
Yeah, that reminds me, because that must have been right around the time when they started taking out all those ads. John, you remember these ads that they would put with the install button across all of social media? Why were those so important?
Well, I think once ByteDance took control musically and really turned it into TikTok, they kind of got a use case that was working really well, and actually had an organic acquisition play to it. Like if you see a TikTok on Instagram, people are like, oh, wow, TikTok, I'll go download that app. But what ByteDance did was invest just massive amounts on acquisition. And, there's articles all over the place you'll see where, Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat are seeing their largest advertisers, ByteDance, just, extremely aggressive paid acquisition campaigns. And they work because when people click on that and download the app, they're instantly addicted. There's a lot of apps that do paid acquisition where they get you in there, but they don't hold you like TikTok holds you. And so when you pour that kind of money into paid acquisition and then have the kind of engagement that comes from it, well, you have what you have now, which is an extremely valuable company. It's only growing.
And a lot of people talk about Musical.ly, but another app that they acquired was Flipagram, which is the company that you helped found. Bert, tell us what that was like. And, had you heard of ByteDance before? What did you think about when they acquired your company?
Well, Flipagram went viral in early 2014. This was well before Musical.ly, well before ByteDance was known anywhere beyond. In fact, I don't even know if they were known in China then. But Flipagram stumbled on something which was allowing people to make short videos with pictures and adding popular music clips. And then they would share that with their friends on Instagram. And so this thing just went wildly viral in 2014. It was the top downloaded app in the world for the first half of 2014. That sparked something, and I know that even Musical.ly saw that in 2014 and saw what happened there. And Musical.ly evolved quite a bit on the Flipagram use case, but that when all that was going on, we saw Musical.ly start to really become popular. Really in 2015 is when there was like this big challenge that went viral, and we saw that, and we saw them climbing the App Store charts, and we were like, man, they're doing something better than what we're doing. And when all that was going on, though, when we found out the founder was in China, we were like, what? We were like, it just didn't make sense. I mean, nothing like this comes out of China. And so we talked to Al. We reached out to Alex the moment they popped in the App Store, and we were like, "What are you guys doing? Do you want to work together?" We were like, "Can we buy this thing somehow?" Like we were, just scrambling to figure out what they were doing, and to figure out was there even a way to collaborate. But they smoked us in 15 and 16. They didn't need us; we needed them.
How do you think they had such a hold on American culture? Like it was almost like Alex knew what American teens wanted, more than anyone else.
Well, I met with one of the other founders in Beijing after we acquired them at ByteDance, and he told me a story about a high school in Texas that they had been trying Musical.ly in other parts of the world. They started in Asia, which is the natural, start in your own backyard, right? And it wasn't working. And he said something happened. They were really focused on this high school in Texas, he told me. They were telling him, hey, if you do this, this is interesting. And something happened there. And, I don't know all the details of it, but, they a lot of iteration, a lot of testing, and a hyper focus on the user and understanding what they want, and just hitting it out of the park is sort of what we saw there.
Yeah, that actually brings up an interesting memory I have, John. I with one of the other founders of Musical.ly, we also we did a lot of focus groups, even back then, 2016 timeframe. We arranged a school focus group with some high schoolers to get some feet in. We actually brought in our co-founder of Musical.ly, and he actually went to a local LA, California high school for us to get feedback from some of the local kids in that area. And it just speaks to just how boots on the ground we were about learning about what kids wanted, what our users wanted to see, and what we were building for them to make it what it is today, for sure.
Yeah.
This is a great segue into our second clip. This is a look inside TikTok's parent company, ByteDance's Beijing office. Okay.
Emerged as a different sort of Chinese employer. China has a reputation for low wages and sprawling factories, but Yiming was paying some of the highest salaries in the market. Here's Yiming with my colleague Peter.
What is the top of the market in terms of AI engineers? What kind of salaries are we talking about?
The unlimited salary for the unlimited talent.
I'm sure they love to hear that.
Unlimited salary for unlimited talent. Sounds like a platitude, but it's not. Let me underscore how unusual this is. At ByteDance, there was no ceiling for how much top employees could earn. Some engineers were making $1 million a year, and Yiming was often paying 50% more than his competitors. Throwing money at a problem became something Yiming would do again and again as his company grew bigger. He saw that paying top dollar to hire employees, acquire other startups, and buy advertising could serve as a kind of shortcut to success, that he could turbocharge his growth by just paying for it. And as fast as he was spending money, even more money kept flowing in from venture capital backers, many of whom were American. Yiming raised almost $8 billion in VC money. In 2018, ByteDance surpassed Uber and became the world's most valuable startup. It's even overtaken companies like Starbucks and Goldman Sachs. The buckets of cash from big investors like SoftBank and Sequoia gave ByteDance a mandate and the means to start expanding around the world.
Part of the purpose of that raise was for ByteDance to essentially go global, to go beyond the borders of China and take their unique technology, and really their secret sauce is this AI that can effectively learn a user's preference and serve them content with a precision that I've not seen anyone else really do.
That's John again, who worked at Flipagram, the slideshow app ByteDance acquired in 2016. He said this would be a big deal. No Chinese consumer app had ever hit it big in the US. John stayed on staff at ByteDance for a couple of years, helping the company buy more American startups and sign music deals with US record labels. He says the first time he walked into ByteDance's Beijing headquarters, he was floored by just how many people were lining up to get in.
I think when I joined, it was a few thousand employees, and when I left, it was like 30,000 or something crazy. But I remember the first day in Beijing at headquarters, I was in the lobby, and there was, I don't know, like 100 people. I met up with the woman I worked for there, and I said, what is that? She's like, oh, those are new hires. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then what I realized, that happened every day. Every day there was this huge, group of new employees.
We'll be right back.
I love that clip of John. I love the picture that you paint of being inside of ByteDance. And tell us more what that felt like. Take us back to that waiting room and tell us what that felt like to see that kind of growth.
It was extraordinary. I've I've been at big companies. I interned at AT&T in college. I've seen big companies, but I have not seen anything like that. And that office that I went to, I had a hotel down the road, and I'd walk there, and it's this big building, and you go in and you have this giant crowd of people in the lobby that are all there for orientation. And I realized, and I would go there every day, and every day there was a different group there. And it was just a stunning thing. And I'm like, where are they going? What are these people doing? I don't even understand how you hire that fast. And a lot of it was, I think, content moderation. So it's not like they were all like these, executives or something, but the hiring was extraordinary. But the culture and there was this just excitement. There was something going on there. I didn't even really know early on what was going on there yet, but I realized something big is happening here because of what was going on with TikTok, because of this insane volume of hiring. And, I'd walk around the office and just a lot of excitement and people sleeping because they work constantly. But, you go to the cafeteria, this huge cafeteria where the food's free, very much like a Google type thing. They aspire to be like, I think, an American tech company in a lot of ways. There's these American quotes all over. I would see Ray Dalio was on this loop video for the whole month. But, that cafeteria with maybe hundreds of people at lunchtime, just in this section that I was in. So a massive thing that was going on, and still obviously is going on there.
And one thing that you worked on in particular was about music. And Margie, I want to bring you in here also, but let's start with John. Why was music so important to the genesis of this and also the staying power?
Well, music is why Flipagram hit it big, and it's why Musical.ly hit it big. Music is, that's sort of peak pop culture. Music is used, it's the ultimate filter. It's it's an audio filter, but it's the ultimate filter. When you take a video and you talking, dancing, whatever it is, without music, and then you add the music, you've got two fundamentally different things. And so the music is magic. And Musical.ly, at the time in 16, 17, and 18 when it was acquired, it was still fundamental to the use case. I don't think it is as much anymore. I mean, my TikTok feed now is mostly comedians who are incredible, but there's no music. But back then, and I would say even still now, the music allows you to express yourself and entertain people and do these almost memes in ways that if you didn't have it, you're dead in the water. It wouldn't work if you took the music. If you took the music out of TikTok now, I think they would have a major problem. And so it's just fundamental to the core object that is a TikTok video.
And Margie, tell us about what it was like, trying to get these musicians early on to sign on to the app and, teach them about what this is and how to use it.
For sure. Yeah. Just to piggyback off of what John was saying, music is the language of the world, and it's so relatable, and anyone can really engage with it. And so I think that's what really made the app so exciting to kind of engage with. But, early on, it was a very interesting experience trying to get artists on, because as Kurt was saying, at the beginning, it felt like it was a very young app. And so a lot of artists weren't sure if they felt comfortable with engaging, because they were like, oh, there's a lot of young teenagers on here. And so really, sharing the numbers and sharing the engagement numbers and comparing them similar to like a Beyonce video versus, a Baby RL or Jacob Sartorius, who were very popular at the time on the app, comparing their ability to be able to amplify a song just by lip syncing it or dancing to it in one video had the potential to possibly impact Billboard charts, which we found in some respects had direct correlations. And so I think when they saw the numbers and they understood like just how impactful being early on to an app that was growing and could grow with you, when they saw that, I think that's what got them excited about it. I think, one example I remember is Nicki Minaj. She learned about it a lot from Jason Derulo, who was one of our first artists that was really vocal on it. And he was the original. He was our biggest artist even at the beginning. And they had a song together. And when she saw that song was charting and doing so well because of all of the musically engagement on it, I ended up having a meeting with her manager about us doing a full campaign with her and bringing the three queens of Musical.ly to meet her at her music video to create Musical.lys together with her new song. And that, once again, really amplified millions and millions of views and not just views. I think that's the unique thing about Musical.ly. It was the creation of videos using the music. That's a true form of engagement that is unlike anywhere else. You can get a view on a video, but for someone to have created a scenario or a video around your song is a true form of engagement that wasn't found anywhere else. And that was really something that we saw take off really well.
So you taught Nicki Minaj how to make a TikTok?
I did. along with some of our other users that we invited to her video shoot. So very cool times being able to engage with a lot of the artists there.
That's awesome. I love what you were saying about that the music doesn't need a language, because I think that helped TikTok grow so wildly globally, because you could do these dances and you could do all these different things because you didn't need to be, you didn't need to know the language the same way you do on like a Twitter or Facebook.
Totally, for sure.
Yeah, if I could add the labels and getting artists on, getting the labels comfortable with Flipagram, with Musical.ly, with TikTok, there was some reluctance because it's user-generated content. And so artists and writers have their contracts with the labels and publishers, and they say, look, you got to be careful what you do with my music. And so the labels and publishers would say, some of the videos that come out of these services aren't that great. And some of them might be offensive. And so there was some real reluctance and concern about just pairing their music with UGC videos. But as Marjay explained, the benefits far, and we now know, outweigh the risks that come with it. But the other thing Marjay said, that it's like mini advertisements, right? If I make a TikTok video with a Nicki Minaj song, now all my followers and my friends who may not know Nicki Minaj or just don't listen to her music, but now all of a sudden they're like, wow, this song's great. Who is that? Oh, it's Nicki Minaj. And that was one of the key selling points with the industry early on, is that, you're talking about hundreds of millions of mini ads with your music flying across social media every month. You're saying you don't want that? And they're like, well, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably a good thing. And it's like, yeah, it's a good thing. Let's do this.
As a user of TikTok, I can just say that works tremendously well. I am not very up to speed on new music, but I often will first hear songs through a TikTok video that I probably wouldn't have discovered otherwise. So it still works even if you're not 15 years old. You're still discovering music that way.
Yeah, but I realize you always have to be careful, because we realized we ended up only knowing 15 to 30 seconds of the songs, because that's the one that would loop over and over again. So we thought that was always funny. We were like, we actually don't know this whole song.
Hey, but everyone only knows the chorus anyway, right?
Right.
So as TikTok was changing the music industry and the social media industry, everything seemed like it was on the up and up. But pretty soon, anti-TikTok sentiment in the US started getting in the way of the app's growth. So we're going to play another clip. And this is, again, from the Foundering podcast, which you can download for free from Apple or Spotify. One very famous person is trying to stoke anti-TikTok sentiment in Washington. Here we go.
Sentiment was building. And there was one person in particular who was cheering. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. For years, Zuckerberg saw TikTok grow, becoming a major competitor, drawing people away from Facebook and Instagram. So Zuckerberg decides to issue his own warning to Washington. He had been called up to Congress to defend accusations that Facebook had gotten too big. Instead, he used this as his chance to deflect attention to China. Here's Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska questioning Zuckerberg.
Mr. Zuckerberg, quite a story, right? Dorm room to the global behemoth that you guys are, only in America. Would you agree with that?
Senator, mostly in America.
You couldn't do this in China, right? Or what you did in 10 years.
Well, Senator, there are some very strong Chinese internet companies.
Right, but you're supposed to answer yes to this question. Okay, come on, I'm trying to help you, right? I mean, give me a break. The answer is yes, okay? So thank you.
The senators are all laughing, but Zuckerberg is looking ahead, barely blinking, with his super straight face. Because Zuckerberg came before Congress with very specific talking points, that Chinese internet companies like TikTok needed to be stopped. He says the issue is bigger than Facebook, and that the rise of China's tech companies were a huge threat to America.
One of the key issues here is Facebook too powerful? Are you too powerful? And do you think you're too powerful?
Well, Senator, I think most of the time when people talk about our scale, they're referencing that we have 2 billion people in our community. And I think one of the big questions that we need to think through here is the vast majority of those 2 billion people are outside of the US. And I think that that's something that, to your point, that Americans should be proud of. Okay, and when I brought up the Chinese internet companies, I think that that's a real strategic and competitive threat that in American technology policy we should be thinking about.
Let me get to another point here real quick. I don't want to interrupt, but...
This was a huge 180 for Zuckerberg. He spent years trying to get into the good graces of the Chinese government because Facebook was banned in China. He learned Mandarin and bragged about speaking to China's president, Xi Jinping. He was so confident about winning China over, but none of it worked. And Zuckerberg eventually gave up. He shifted gears and China became the enemy. In a later speech at Georgetown University, Zuckerberg named TikTok directly.
While our services like WhatsApp are used by protesters and activists, due to strong encryption and privacy protections, on TikTok, the Chinese app growing quickly around the world, mentions of these same protests are censored, even here in the US. Is that the internet that we want?
We'll be right back.
Again, just a reminder to folks watching or listening to a live Q&A of Foundering, the TikTok story. And if you have any questions about the rise of TikTok or where we are now with TikTok, please send them on Twitter or on YouTube. And we are happy to take audience questions anytime. I want to go over to you, Kurt, to reflect a little bit about the clip we just heard. And the reason why we talk about Zuckerberg and Facebook in this podcast is because it was the first app in a while to really come and shake Mark Zuckerberg up at his core. You know, tell us a little bit about why Mark Zuckerberg is in front of Congress talking about China.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg understands the power of China probably as well as any tech executive, in part because, to your point, Shelley, he's been trying to get into China with his own products for over a decade without any success. And he's gone to great lengths to try and get there. I mean, when you think about what Facebook's goal is, it's connecting the world, right? How do you do that when the most populous country in the world does not have access to your products? So he has always thought of China as this crown jewel, if you will, of like getting his mission out there. And I think at a certain point when he realized, okay, this isn't going to happen for me, suddenly he also appreciated the fact that, well, the reason it was so valuable to me is that it's valuable to other people too, and that China is a market that is now a threat to me, right? If I can't operate there, that means that other people that are suddenly operating in the world's most populous country are a threat to Facebook. And I think, a big thing that doesn't necessarily get said quite as bluntly, but is relevant here, is that they see, the internet rules in China as being unfair, right? They don't think that the rest of the world gets to play by the same rules, and as a result, they're worried that if TikTok, ByteDance, if other Chinese companies become the most popular, those kind of rules of the internet will extend to India, right? Which is a massive country where Facebook is popular. They'll extend to other parts of Asia where Facebook is trying to have a foothold. And so I think not only is he afraid that he's missed out on China, I think that's an obvious one, but I think he's now worried that the rise of these Chinese companies are going to edge him or shoulder him out of some of the other markets Facebook really cares about. I think India being probably number one on their list.
And Facebook even tried to buy TikTok at one point, right?
That's right. I mean, Facebook tries to buy almost everything that poses any kind of competitive threat to them, but TikTok was no exception. Now in the most recent round of discussions, Facebook wasn't really a serious player because they're dealing with a lot of antitrust issues and regulatory issues. And of course, you have the CEO of Facebook coming over and saying, "Hey, China's a real threat. Be wary of TikTok." He can't necessarily then go buy TikTok. That isn't a great look for him. But this was many years ago when Facebook was in that position, and they did give it a look, and they decided to pass. And I'm sure that, in hindsight, that was probably a decision he would like to have back.
So we have a question from the audience. I hope that I pronounced this correctly. YouTube viewer Ozan, and Ozan says, "How can you state that TikTok is changing social media when big creators are trying to move and diversify their following to other social media platforms?" And I think, what he's referencing in is after the Trump ban earlier this summer or last summer, a lot of TikTok users decided, oh, shoot, like if this goes away, I have to diversify. I have to build on YouTube. I have to build on Instagram and Reels and Snapchat. What do you make of that, Kurt? Do you think that TikTokers are going to continue to stay loyal, or do you think that they are going to try to diversify and move to other platforms?
I think they are going to diversify, and I think that what we've seen historically is that if you're a creator, you go first where you can get the largest audience, and then second where you can make money from that audience. And that's why YouTube has been really successful for a lot of places, and that's why you're seeing companies like Facebook and Twitter in particular right now try to scramble to roll out subscriptions or tipping or whatever you want to call it, because they realize we offer the audience part, but we don't really offer the monetization part. And so where I think it's safe and fair to say that TikTok is revolutionizing the social media industry is that when you have a new player come along that's suddenly drawing so much attention, it forces the other companies to up their game, right? Now suddenly Facebook might not be Instagram might not be the most popular place if you want to promote your music video. So now Instagram says, okay, shoot, well, now we have to give them a way to make money from it because otherwise TikTok's just as valuable. And then, Twitter sees that and they have to do something even better, right? So it's kind of this keeping up with the Joneses idea where when there's a new entrant that does something really well, it forces everyone else to kind of build their own feature set or their own, monetization to try and keep up. And that's where I think TikTok has probably had the most influence on the broader industry.
And what do you think, Margie, on that topic?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's it's just really important to diversify your platforms, especially there's definitely new ones popping up, and there's also more niche platforms popping up that allows you to be able to really hone into whatever vertical of content you create, such as beauty, what I'm working on, or any other type of vertical like comedy. And so I think it's really important to make sure you are not counting all your eggs in one basket and diversifying across the board and really keeping in touch on the trends and figuring out what's always going to be the next maybe big thing on the horizon and being in tune with that as well. while still being able to maintain what you're doing.
If I could add
already.
Can I add in here? I don't think the ban did a thing to TikTok. If you look at the Q1 download report, TikTok was #1. They beat Facebook, they beat YouTube. So there was no slowdown from that. There was concern, and people may have done it. But the thing about TikTok is that is a specific type of use case. It is about entertainment. Mm-hmm. And Instagram is not about that. Twitter is not about that. YouTube is, but it's long form. It's a long form platform, and you're competing with so many more people on there. So I agree with what you guys are saying, but I don't think any momentum was lost. I don't think people were like, well, I thought they were going to get banned, so now I'm done with TikTok. I don't think that happened. And again, I base it purely on their download data from Q1. It shows that they're just crushing it right now. So
there was probably even more excitement around it. There was probably even more excitement around it because of controversy. So I think more and more people heard about it.
They were in the news for months, and I think a bunch of people. I know people in my circle were like, "What's TikTok?" I'm like, "Oh, welcome to my world." Right. But they didn't know anything about it, and now after all the drama, they did know about it.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to reflect on that drama for a minute. Kurt, can you tell us how crazy was this almost sale process that never happened, but still could maybe happen? Break it down for us real quick.
It was incredibly crazy, as you know, Shelly. Shelly and I ended up talking a lot over a couple months stretch at the end of last year, beginning of this year. I mean, I think the thing, there were a bunch of things that just don't normally happen, right? And you could go all the way to the basic, M&A talks don't normally happen publicly, right? You find out that Flipagram or Musical.ly was acquired after the deal is all finalized and everyone's ready to announce it. You don't see the sausage getting made. And so we were seeing that. Now, you also don't see the president, an elected politician, forcing the sale of a private business, right? And especially a private business that is owned by a company in another country that you're at a, kind of a geopolitical war with, right? And so there were just so many elements to this story that were unusual and that were things that we had never seen before, that it really was a bizarre thing to write about and report about, because every single day felt like there was no background that you could turn to. Like usually you get a story and you're like, okay, well, I've covered a version of this before. But with this story, it was like, well, can they do that? I don't even know. Like, we've never seen that before. I guess we need to now go find out. So it was quite unique, I would say, is the kind way of describing it.
And so TikTok is told by President Trump, you have 45 days to find a buyer in the US or risk being banned. First, they thought they were going to go with Microsoft. Then they decided to go with Oracle. Then TikTok waits out Donald Trump, and Donald Trump leaves office. And then, nothing yet happens. Joe Biden takes over the presidency and basically puts a hold on everything. What do you guys think happens next? I mean, let's start with Kurt, and then I want to hear from John and Margie too.
What happens next? I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine a deal getting done at this point, because even if, in 6 months, it first of all, it just doesn't feel like a priority for the Biden administration, which is fine. But, as a result, not a lot is happening behind the scenes, I don't believe. And let's pretend 6 months from now, they pick up this baton and they say, hey, you know what, we want to do that. Well, a whole year has gone by, right? All of a sudden, Oracle's business is in a different place. TikTok's business is in a different place. The user base is probably 100, 200 million more users than it was a year ago. So they have to kind of start everything, I would think, almost start from scratch. And so I just I'm not optimistic that anything gets done at this stage. It certainly could, but we've now been talking about this for almost a full year, and it doesn't feel like anything has happened in the last 5 months. And I'm not getting a sense that that's going to kickstart again.
And I'll just remind people you're listening to a live Q&A about founding the TikTok story. If you have any questions, ask us on Twitter or on YouTube. I'll head over to John. You're still a ByteDance investor. What was it like for you during this tumultuous period to kind of have your friends, like you mentioned, call you on the phone, ask you about it? And, why do you remain invested in ByteDance?
Well, yeah, it was pretty disconcerting, all of that last year. I think the thing that we have yet to see is actual evidence of some kind of national security threat. That to me was where I'm like, well, what is it? What is the problem? Do you have a document? Is there something that shows the Chinese government's actually involved? And nothing like that has been shown. And so I think that kind of was like, I think this is more politics and other things going on than an actual problem, which is why it's probably not a priority for Biden and the Biden administration. But I continue to be involved just because the TikTok use case is fundamentally different than Instagram, than Twitter, than YouTube. I think it's superior. I think it's a better product. Anyone who's been on TikTok, you'll see it is incredibly entertaining. And so I think that, and the fact that it's a Chinese company, it doesn't bother. I believe very much in capitalism and competition. And I don't think about, having, Zuckerberg having too much power. He's going to be out innovated soon. You look at technology, it always gets scary. Oh, IBM is too big, but look at them now, right? And so I just think it doesn't bother me they're Chinese. And after getting to know them, which they very much are trying to be like an American company. And I think if they were a national security threat, I think that'd be the end of their business. I think they'd be done if that were real, and they know it, and the Chinese government knows it. And so I think I love watching them succeed. And but frankly, over time, someone else is going to come out from some other, probably America, but some other country, and probably beat them at their own game at some point.
Yeah, Kurt and I have talked a lot about how the most frustrating part about all of this, spending so much time and effort learning about this company and writing about this company, is that we still don't really have the answer to the national security question. We know that ByteDance and TikTok say they don't give any data to the Chinese government, that they host their data in in the US and in Singapore. But, there still remains to be the case that China does have a national security law that requires any company to give them over data. And so it's really hard to prove a negative. What if it's hard to prove that TikTok won't do something in the future? So I think it's been a really tricky thing. I was curious what it was like for you guys to participate in the podcast and kind of think back through, kind of take a stroll down memory lane. Marjay, maybe you can reflect a little bit about what the process was like for you.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique experience, kind of reflecting back on my time there. That was my first introduction into the startup world. I came from Google and YouTube, and left. Musically recruited me away to start the LA office for Musically, and it was an amazing experience to have so many unique responsibilities and being part of the early stages of a company. And it's it definitely had its ups and downs, for sure, being in a startup and navigating personalities and different cultures as well. And yeah, I enjoyed having the opportunity to think back on those unique times. So thanks for sure. It's really great.
Did you think back then what Musically would turn into TikTok and what TikTok would be now?
I think I definitely saw the vision, for sure. Unless I don't think I would have left Google to go there. I think that I'm always excited to see what kids are looking at in the next foray of everything. And I saw early on when I was even interviewing there and learning more about the company, even in December 2015, that there was something special that they were creating, and speaking with parents that had kids that were engaging on Musical.ly, and them telling us their stories about, oh, you've helped my son or daughter become more confident because they're using Musical.ly to engage, and it's a unique experience for them, and it's helping them open up and be more outgoing and all those things. And so it's definitely I definitely saw the vision, and not surprised where it's at today. I was happy to be part of the beginning.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was finished.
I was just going to say, John, I know the whole podcast hasn't come out and you've only listened to a few of the episodes, but curious to hear what you think about reflecting on your time and, taking part in the podcast.
Yeah, well, it's been great. The whole thing. I love talking about this and going through the history of it all has been wonderful. I love this stuff. I've been doing this a long time, of building businesses in tech and hoping you catch something and scale something and ultimately you're changing things. Flipagram and Musical.ly and TikTok is changing the way the way we communicate. And I think the net is that the world's becoming a better place. There's side effects. There's some side effects we've seen in recent years, not just but all over social media. We see these sort of challenges, but the net, I think, is that we're advancing, culturally advancing as like a species. So I love to be a part of it and thinking back on it all and all the trials and tribulations, and it was great that negotiating with the music industry. That was one of the most challenging deals I'd ever done in my life because, well, we were using the music illegally, and so it started out as, you guys are pirates and we're going to sue you to Kingdom Come, and from that to like, oh wow, I'm going to lose my house and everything, and to where we are now, and just the crazy adventures and all that happened throughout that has been really neat.
Yeah, probably no other industry has gone such a 180 on TikTok. Like, to your point about stealing the music, and now think of how much money they're making off of this industry.
Yeah. Well, that was the case we made, was that this is going to be the next Instagram. This is going to make you tons of money. And, back then, if you had told me back then how this played out, I would have been like, oh, really? It's actually going to happen? Because, I don't know, we totally believed it. No one knows what's really going on with this stuff, and we're all feeling our way through it. And it's amazing to think back those early days when, we kind of consider ourselves a glorified slideshow maker, turning into, something world changing.
And Kurt, what was it like to be reporting on this podcast while everything was changing week by week? There was kind of, I like to go back and listen to some of these interviews we've done, because when you talk to someone, you capture this moment of time that was just so different depending on what month you spoke to someone, had a different outlook for TikTok.
Totally. And, there was an added challenge of getting people to agree to talk, right? Because it was like right in the middle of a geopolitical battle. And so everyone was like, well, I don't really want to go on the record to like talk about, TikTok when the president of the United States is trying to ban the app from the face of the earth. And so it added an extra wrinkle. But I think the thing that's cool about podcasts, and just, I always feel this way when I write a story, is like, I listen to the audio of the interview and it's like, I wish I could grab the quotes as actual audio quotes, because the voice and the tone and the pauses and whatever it may be, those tell almost as much about what that person's saying as the words that they say. And so in print, you miss that, right? And I think with a podcast, you just have so much more opportunity to sit down for an hour and be comfortable and really dig in on a topic. And so it just creates like a totally different reporting experience. And, obviously, Shelley, you and Sean did 95% of the work on this thing, but it was fun to be associated and kind of get the experience of what it's like to put together something like this, because it is a very different reporting experience than doing print.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my biggest lessons learned that Sean told me from day one, the producer extraordinaire that she is that, you have to listen. People's tone of voice, the way they say something is just so different than in the written word. John, Marjay, I was curious, Zhang Yiming, the CEO of ByteDance, and Alex Ju of Musical.ly, and now still working at ByteDance, are still not really well known to a lot of people. What would you say are like maybe one or two things that people should know about them?
Go ahead, Marjay.
Go first. I would definitely say Alex certainly is and was and is a visionary when it comes to his initial vision of what Musical.ly could be and become, and it was a really great opportunity to work alongside him and see and work next to such genius. And I think I think there's sometimes I think a lot of times there was he was kind of mystical, right? So I think he didn't necessarily always want to be in the spotlight per se in the first place, and so I think it's kind of based on his personality. But he definitely had a lot of passion for what he was doing and put a lot of time into it, and obviously, and this is what we see today from a lot of the work that he did, and early stages, being able to be on the ground floor and growing the app to, when I was there, from 60 million to, over 300 million was a really an amazing experience, and looking forward to translating in the future and my future goals. So it was really great. And thank you for having me.
And John, what do you think is, something that isn't really as well known about Zhang Yiming as maybe should be?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't spend a ton of time with him. I'd had a few times with him in Beijing and in LA. He's a very kind and humble man, which is not typical of people in that role, at least in my experience. He's very patient about things. In tech, things move real fast, and you're iterating fast, competition's moving fast, and there's this sort of urgency that I've always seen and had in the tech world, but it doesn't seem to be going that way with him. He's like playing some long game somehow. So there's like a patience and a long view. I think he really does look at American tech as a model for the company he's building. Maybe not the leaders of those companies, but the way they're built, the way they operate, that seems to be like he seems to look at that as for how he's building his company. And you just walk around the office in Beijing, and there's the quotes from US businessmen and the videos of American tech leaders, the way the free lunch like Google has, and so I think he's trying to take some elements of what's going on here, but he definitely has his own persona that I like. I thought he's very gracious and kind, and I appreciate that more than the high and mighty, super charismatic type.
Thank you. That is so fascinating. Okay, that is it for the Foundering Podcast live Q&A. Thank you all so much for joining us. Today, you heard from Marjay Roberts, ex-Musical.ly employee and founder of New Notions, John Bolton, ex-ByteDance employee and founder of Super Hi-Fi, Kurt Wagner, social media reporter for Bloomberg, and Shelley Banjo, host of the Foundering podcast, and myself, Sean Wen. Keep downloading and listening to the Foundering podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. It's available for free on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
See ya.
Bye.